Welcome, everybody, to Thursday, July 11th, 2024, Parks and Rec Board. I pledge allegiance. The approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's been motioned and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Nope. So we're moving quite along here. Reports?
Good evening, everybody. I just want to provide a little report on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 10th annual Great American Backyard Campout. We had that on Saturday, June 1st. It was a beautiful night, especially in 10 years, which really is an amazing milestone to get to with this event. I especially want to thank Troop 284 for all of their support and leadership, especially Pete Murphy. He played a big role in this year's event, helping us get a lot of things organized. We had about 300 people registered, even though that many didn't show up, as sometimes folks register, and sometimes there's change of events and things whenever it's a free event for sign up, but really was heavily attended and was a really beautiful night with a lot of great activities. So here are just some pictures I wanted to step through, kind of show some snapshots from the evening. As I mentioned, we had a lot of really fun activities. There's a schedule here to the right where we started with registration at 4 o'clock and then, of course, ended at the end of the night at Lights Out at approximately 10. We had some night viewing with the Delaware Valley Astronomers Association. We had a cookout at the campfire in the back of the Willows, and a lot of really great things with some trail hikes and things like that. We had some scouts that led a trail hike to talk about some of the scout projects that have been done over the years, so that was something new we did this year, and was really a lot of fun for folks. Some family hikes. There was a lot of fishing going on. We had some organizations come out and table and kind of promote some of the things that they're doing. For instance, the Tick Research Lab of PA came out to do tick ID. As I mentioned, we had fishing, and it was the Mid-Atlantic Youth Anglers, an outdoor organization that came and did that. We had members of Radnor Conservancy, the EAC, Hiking Hound, which was a new partner that we worked with that's doing some programming for us, came out, and of course Delaware Valley Orienteers Association. So it was really a fun night, and I think folks had a really good time. Some folks were introduced to camping for the first time. Some, of course, are kind of veterans that are back with us, and overall just a really great evening and an exciting event and something that we enjoy every year delivering to the community. So for those who came out and joined, hope you had a wonderful time. We'll look forward to continuing the event on into many years to come. So that was our highlight of June from an event standpoint, and then I just wanted to focus a little bit on Radnor Day Camp. We kicked off Radnor Day Camp on Monday, June 24th. We currently have a staff of about 45. This is a snapshot of everybody in the gym at Radnor Elementary. Right now, we have campers at 203. That's our participation. So we're up by about 40 from last year. So we definitely saw a pretty big increase. We have after camp this year from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. So typically camp hours run from 9 to 3, and then we evaluated adding a before camp and an after camp. We sent out some surveys and things last year, and we ended up landing on an after camp program. So we have some staff that are staying later for us and working to be able to provide that service for the families. And there's about 16 families that are taking advantage of that service. So we're really excited about that. I also want to highlight some of our staff members. We have a staff member, Megan Weaver-Horex, who runs our performing arts programming. She actually owns Mainline Dance Company here in Radnor. She's in her 16th year for us, and we're really excited to have her back on board. Her leadership is just unparalleled with the camp, and overall just a great face over the years that people really come to enjoy and deliver some great programming within the camp program itself with the performing arts and creative dance program. Our camp director, Jean Evans, is in her 4th year, and she's really another leader on our behalf of the camp that's second to none, and brings a lot of experience in education, a lot of experience with behavioral situations and things like that she knows how to address and manage, and overall just really great with the staff. and just brings some really great new ideas and things every year to us. So we're excited to have her back. We have Emma and Jesse Pinto working for us this summer. They're in their third year. They run our sports and games and creative crafts program. We have AJ Nordone, who is our assistant director. He's back in his fourth year, so a lot of tenure this year. I just wanted to highlight our swimming director, Mary Beth Ryan, is in her 10th year. She had some stops and starts over the years, so the swimming program takes place at Club La Maison. Over the years have been a mix of La Maison, Eastern University, Radnor High School, but this year we landed back there. And we have a couple of other staff members, Luke Tobin and Cameron Kachansky. They're both in their third year also. So some very great folks coming back to us to work for the summer, bringing a lot of hindsight, knowledge, and great skills, of course, and high energy. It's been a really rough summer with the weather. So although we're at Radnor Elementary and we have a mix of being indoor and outdoor, there's still a substantial portion of the program that does take place outdoors, and they're in and out a lot, so they endure a lot, of course, with the heat. And even though it's just week 3, I know their energy has still been riding high. We'll continue to find ways to motivate them as we come down the stretch here in the last 3 weeks of camp starting next week. So I really wanted to make that highlight. I also just wanted to thank Radnor School District for all of their continued support. We work very closely with the transportation department that provides not only the daily transportation to and from the camp at various bus stops throughout the township, but they also provide the transportation to the pool each day over at La Maison. They also provide our transportation for our weekly trips that the campers go on. So they play a big role to that. So I want to thank them and thank all the drivers. Lots of familiar faces for the campers, being that, the majority of all of them are, our students here in the Radnor School District, Radnor school system, so they recognize the drivers, recognize the staff. So it's really a great sense of community there, and obviously really enjoy working with the staff at Radnor School District. We also work heavily with the operations department, given the spaces that we use at Radnor Elementary. Radnor Middle School is where we deliver our annual camp performance. So we use the theater over there. And then, of course, working closely with the staff at Radnor Elementary, and Dr. Young, who is the principal over there, really has given us amazing support. In fact, she even came down and joined us at our staff training to meet and interact with all of the staff and give them some good tips and suggestions and things like that, from an education standpoint. So it was really great to have her part of it. In addition, we also work very closely with the special education department. We have several campers within the camp that require one-on-one behavioral support and overall just general support from a standpoint of, being there for, helping make sure those campers get through their camp day. So the special education department this year really has played a big role in helping us understand the needs of so many students so that we can make those accommodations at camp. Radnor, our summer Survivor Camp is going on at the Willows. We are in, I believe, our 4th week over there, so another camp actually run by our department now. I think we've been running this program for about 20 years with World Cup Sports Academy in different variations, so it's been around for a really long time. Another camp that has seen a surge in participation. Also, our Wizarding Camp, which is going to be coming up in a couple weeks, led by our department program coordinator, Tracy Kroom. I know if you were to step into her office right now, you'd see all kinds of fun things getting set up for Wizarding, Harry Potter activities. So she's ready to do that and deliver that camp over at Hilltop Preparatory School. And they did issue us a 3rd week this summer. So we're able to take another 30 kids onto that program. Whereas this year, as I noted there in my report, we have about 102 kids that are going to be attending the Wizarding Camp. So a lot of fun things going on. I know we're going to get to projects in a minute, but I also wanted to just highlight that at the upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting on the 17th, we will receive our new appointment of our member. So we'll anticipate that for September, we'll have a person here joining us as part of the Parks and Recreation Board and rounding out our group of 7. So we'll look forward to that. And that concludes my report, basically, for, I guess, what's really been, most of June, a little bit of May within there, and, of course, things that are going on right now. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Tammy, quick question. How many are enrolled in the Radnor day camps at any given time in a total, like full day and half day?
Well, this year we have 203.
203. And is that program like revenue neutral at this point? Like, is the money that goes in basically pay for the program, or is there any subsidies for that?
There's not a subsidy. If you look at all of our direct costs are covered in full on behalf of the proceeds that are generated
Proceeds
from.
pay for the program.
Yes, yes. So if we start to look at, I mean, and so that actually includes the transportation that we pay for Radnor School District, the facility usage that we pay for Radnor School District, all of our staff, all of our supplies that directly go for the camp. We have a significant amount of scholarships this year as well. Something else I had noted within my my report. So there's a significant subsidy that's going towards that as well. I think we have about 45 kids that are on scholarship this year. And so when you start to look at like my time and the department staff time, so if we were to divide that by a percentage, you know, based on the time that they spent relative to day camp, so that we look at that as an indirect cost, some of those aren't quite as covered, but when we look at the hard direct costs, they are covered by the revenues.
The scholarships are in full, or are they partial?
It's a mix.
A mix.
The majority of them are full
And
scholarships.
that's on the website, the scholarship information?
So there's a footnote of the information. There should be a note on our registration that scholarships are
registration
available.
part,
We
yes.
also interface with a lot of groups throughout the community.
Okay.
We also interface with the school district. So the social workers at each of the schools help us outreach because we know they know the students more than anybody, and they especially know some of, you know, their financial situations, because if they qualify for a special lunch program, free lunch program, subsidized lunch program, they help us work with those families so that we can provide that bridge to get them to camp, provided it's a good fit for them.
And the amount of participants are about stable each year for the last few years, or is it something that we're going to see more and more campers each year? Is it growing?
Well, since COVID, it's growing.
Yeah.
So if we go back to 2009, we had about 310 kids.
Okay.
Then, you know, we sort of went down a little bit. You know, we're sort of around 280 was our average for quite a few years. And then COVID, of course, we plummeted, but we had a different dynamic to camp. We had offered a Zoom-based camp, and then we did a park-based camp. So we had big changes that were happening there. And then into 2021, I don't recall exactly what our numbers were, but I think they were somewhere around 100. And then in 2022, they rebounded yet again. I think went to like, you know, 150, something like that, 140. And then last year, we were at like 163, and this year, 203.
Are surrounding townships providing a similar level of service, or are we a high bar, you think, in terms of providing, because it's a great program for local families. Is it the same in other local townships?
So I know it depends on where you look. I think comparative to Upper Marion, Lower Marion, Haverford, I know that Tredyffrin provides an outdoor-based camp, so it's a little bit of a different dynamic, but I think we're on par. I wouldn't put us in the classification of a private-based camp. You know, we don't have rock climbing and go-karts and all those kinds of things, but we do have a lot of really great activities that sort of span a lot of different areas. You know, we have sports and games, we have performing arts, and then last year we had a nature coordinator, but we're also as good as the staff that we get as well that come in each year, because obviously every year there's high turnover at different levels.
It just seems like it's doing a great community need, you know, and it's a great program to have, so.
Yeah, we take a lot of pride in it, you know,
Big
and
operation.
what's that?
It's a big
It
operation.
is a huge operation, and the amount of time, and you know, I definitely have to give recognition here to Heather DeCanzio, who's our program supervisor. The amount of time that we spend through the hiring process is significant, and that is a process that we manage directly. So we manage every phase that goes into the HR process. So everything from the job solicitation, you know, we'll go out to job fairs, we will interface with colleges and universities, we have website blogs and things like that we belong to try and outreach and hire folks, and we participate in a lot of other, you know, hiring opportunities that come along. And then it's the interview.
Right.
There's mandatory conditions of hiring. We have certain state standards we have to adhere to with background checks and things like that. Drug test. Everybody's CPR, first aid, AED certified. So, and the list goes on from there.
Is there camping credentials, a certain type of credentialing that's associated with this? I know that there's some camps that get standards. Is there such a thing for this?
There is. There's something called the American Camping Association. They have an ACA accreditation. We are not ACA accredited, but I have reviewed a lot of the details and credentials and things that it takes to become that. It's quite onerous, I will say. There's a lot of application detail that goes into it. So it's not something we've been able to ascertain, but some of it is predicated on having your own site that you operate out of consistently, and then your site has to meet certain guidelines as well.
And residential, I assume, are a bigger chunk of, residential camps are a big part of that.
Yes. So, but we try to follow it. We try to follow what we see as some of the health and safety standards that they deliver, in some of the structural standards that they deliver, just so that we are at least making that attempt to try to, have those sorts of things that apply to our camp. And I will say, when it comes to our staffing, so for instance, the state does require, they require background checks, but they're not required annually. So it's based on a 3-year system, but we do it annually. So even though we'll have all of our staff go through the state system, we also do our own in-house system. We belong to Background Investigation Bureau, which is a company that we use to do those on an annual basis. And then even taking it a step further, if we have some other suspicion or something that's going on, we have the police department that we interact with as well. So
your biggest pool of employees are coming from high school, college, teachers?
It's a mix. It's definitely a mix. We definitely have more high school and college students than we have teachers. But at the higher levels of camp, we do have teachers that are there. So, for instance, our camp director, she's actually working on her doctorate in a level of education and curriculum. You're welcome.
Board of Commissioners? Anything to report from the Board of Commissioners?
Oh, sorry about that. No. No. I know we approved the thing for Fenimore for them to do, it was at $50,000 for them to do, gives more numbers and stuff, more precise.
Okay. Shade Tree Commission?
Just the one thing I wanted to point out, the Shade Tree Committee and the commissioners had reviewed a tree risk assessment action plan. So if you're interested in learning more and seeing what that entails, there's a lot of details. We basically had a tree risk assessment that was done in February by the Township arborist. And then it was reviewed by the Board of Commissioners in 2 different meetings, at the May 20th meeting and then again at the June 17th meeting. So there were presentations that were made by our Director of Public Works, Rick Foster. The tree risk assessment is posted on the website under the Public Works header. So if you're interested and you want to read that and you want to watch those meetings, on the May 22nd meeting for the Shade Tree Commission, I know they discussed it as well. And essentially what they came up with was like a 1 to 2 year assessment plan where the parks would be reviewed in terms of the tree risk hazards. And then I think it was 5 years for the walking trails, so like Skunk Hollow, Itham Valley, and some of those other locations. But as part of this review, which I believe was done 10 years ago, now now the goal is to generate sort of a more frequent plan of review. So I know in the last assessment there were approximately 270 trees that were deemed hazardous, eminent risk hazardous, to be taken down as part of that, with 93 prunings. And then on the back end of it is a reforesting plan that the Shade Tree Commission is also working on. So because the removal of 270 trees right now is so difficult because of the cost. What the Board of Commissioners had authorized was up to $25,000 to be expended on the most hazard trees. So they went back and they did another review, and this is part of what you would see in the June 17th presentation, is those respective parks that would have those trees that would be slated to come down. So approximately 11 of them would be contracted out to a service to come in and do it because of their size. There's some that are substantial. And then 42 would actually be removed in-house by the Public Works Department because they're much smaller and much more manageable, essentially. The bigger the tree, we don't have the ability to be able to take those down in-house. We don't have the equipment, the safety, the training, everything that goes with that. So I did want to report that because it applies to parks, and it is fairly significant with regards to some of the work that the Shade Tree Commission is doing. I know they're doing a plethora of other things. I know they're probably gearing up for the fall planting program. I know they have an ordinance review that's on the agenda Monday night for the commissioners that they're looking at, applies a little bit more towards private homeowners. So a lot of things going on there, and I would just, suggest if you are interested, check out their agenda each month, and or, catch the meetings maybe in the specific spots or topics that are applicable to parks.
Next, excuse me, other reports? There are none? New business?
Well, I wanted to follow up on what Commissioner Riley had just noted. There was an extensive presentation that I gave at the June 17th Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm not going to go back through the details of it, but I would suggest if you get an opportunity, if you haven't already, have a watch. I did do a recap kind of on the road we've traveled overall, so it was a bit long. Some of it might be able to fast forward through, being that you here at the Parks Board have heard, I know a lot of the history of how the project has emerged over the years. But essentially what was approved is a resolution authorizing Seiler Jury, who is the consultant that we had engaged in November to do a preliminary review of the stable to understand if there was a way to rehabilitate it into the bathrooms and the storage in a more cost-effective manner. So essentially they did that work, which again was authorized in November. And now what basically has been approved by the Board of Commissioners is to come back and now basically put a bid package together with a final plan. So there's a lot of details within the presentation. I would suggest to take a look at that. That I kind of laid out that, so in their estimation of the probable costs, which we've talked about, has kind of been around that 1 million mark. We went in as staff and looked at the remaining amount of money and funding that's available from the general obligation bond, which we knew to be around 1.6 million. We've talked about that number a lot. And to look at, okay, what kind of work can we get done if the stable is rehabbed at a cost that is estimated around 1 million. And we sat down as staff and looked at all of our strengths and the things that we can manage to make the project happen. And that included things like the rehabilitation of the parking lots. It included the pavilion, managing, the replacement of the pavilion, making that a direct purchase through a cooperative purchasing opportunity versus having another consultant come in and manage all of that for us. We looked at rehabilitation in the lower parking lot. We looked at the accessibility. So I had laid out a plan that in addition to rehabbing those parts of the park also includes providing the accessible walkway through the park that can essentially get you all the way from the lower parking lot to the playground, all the way to the pavilion, and then up to the stable. And with that, we detailed a budget that even included some tree planting. So provided that the bid comes in where we expect it to for the stable, all of that work can get done. So basically right now, Seiler Jury has been authorized. They're moving forward to prepare bid documentation. So we expect that probably in September, October at the latest, we will bid the project for the stable. Now, if the bids come in and they're higher than what we expected, we're probably going to have to go back to the drawing board and take a closer look at that. But they do feel that their estimates were pretty spot on. But we'd never know with the bidding climate and, the township obviously being subject through, a lot of pieces with prevailing wages and things like that, I know was taken into consideration. But provided the bids come in, where we expect them, or better, we know that we can get a good chunk of the remaining work done on the project. So I'd be happy to step back through parts of the presentation if you would like me to tonight. Otherwise, I would say watch it. I think it's definitely a worthwhile watch to see the history again and just all the pieces in terms of how they line up. And so just to make it clear, the investment that the commissioners made, the authorization that they made to Seiler Drury to carry out the next steps is not a commitment to spend $1 million on, it's not a direct commitment. It's not saying we are spending $1 million to rehab the stable. It's basically saying we're going to go to bid, we're going to see what this looks like, and then we still have to come back and make that decision. So it's that vote has not occurred yet. And there will be plenty of checks and balances in subsequent meetings as we go along. And of course, this will remain an agenda item for the Parks Board, probably for a very long time, and we'll continue to talk about it as it emerges.
Thanks, Tammy. I hesitate to ask a question, but I will. Ideally, is there hope to try to get the project done in calendar year 25?
Yes.
Okay.
So if the bids come back so if we go to bid September, October, realistically by the end of the year, we could be awarding with construction starting in 2025. And when construction would start, then that's where we would know staff can now begin to work on their pieces. So essentially the engineering department would be overseeing all the engineering that would take place with regards to the parking lots and the renovation. Of course, we would have to bid that out because having that asphalt work done it's another bid, but it's not another consultant coming in and doing that. And our engineering team, under the direction of Steve Norsini, would oversee that. And then our Public Works Department would take on some of the work that they can manage. So for instance, the removal of the pavilion would fall under their purview. They are able to do some of the base work with regards to the accessible pathway. They also are able to do some of the work that's going to happen relative to the lower parking lot. We know we have to reconstruct the apron at the drive-in. There's also an accessible parking space that's going to have to be reconfigured within that area. And then some just general cleanup. Like we have some areas where some grading can happen. There's, the bumpers at the bottom parking lot are a little scattered and cracked. Like those will all be replaced. And I think some cosmetic things like that is really going to change the dynamic of the park. But also meet that goal of a minimal impact to what I know is desired and was one of the goals as part of the project that was set back in, I guess, September of 2022.
The fence?
Fencing, yes.
Is
So
that
the fencing would be replaced all along the perimeter
And that would be
of the park.
sooner than later.
Well, we won't start until we know what the bid comes in
Okay.
on the
But that would be
in-house project.
yeah.
So, and so along Eagle Road and Paul Road, currently there's, a galvanized fence that runs along there. There's also fencing that separates the neighbors at the pond side of the park to the south. So that's another area where that fencing would also be replaced.
Was there a sense what that product would be?
Yes, so when we did our budget to come up with the numbers that you would see in the presentation that I had presented, that was based on along Eagle Road and Paul Road, basically being a post and rail fence, like very nice, tasteful, rustic looking type of
fitting.
fence. Fitting for Fenimore Woods, absolutely. But then along the neighbor's side, so I had met with the neighbors, I met with Eastern University to kind of tell them what we thought our plan was there. And for that side of the park seemed reasonable to go with like a 5-foot black vinyl coated fence. I know there was some desire for post and rail there, so we would have to take a look at cost, and then obviously the ability to be able to get in and out of the park, it's a little bit more guarded with a 5-foot, galvanized type fence, with black vinyl coat versus post and rail. So we're going to continue to look at that. But the pricing would have been based off of the black vinyl coat along that area. And all those numbers that we prepared on our end to kind of get within the budget, again, we're working backwards from that 1.6 essentially, all come with conservative estimates. They come with contingency costs, permitting costs, things like that. All of that is built in and baked into that entire number.
And the plan is still stabilization of that pavilion or replacement?
It's replacement.
Replacement.
Okay. I took a walk through there. It seemed like the tarp is covering more of the stable now from the time, I guess, earlier. Is that, I guess they already know what's underneath that completely.
In portions from the inside, yes.
Yeah.
So when they went inside, well, first of all, when they examined it, they did pull parts of it back. And then they also did an interior examination as well with some selective demo to see what the conditions were.
Okay.
It was a very deep look.
Yeah.
And they also used some of the detail that came from Gannett Fleming initially, if we go back and look at, their original review.
Right.
That goes back to like July 2021.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Any old business?
Yeah.
Odoriceo? Anything on, let's see, Fenimore Woods, Odoriceo?
On Monday night, at the Board of Commissioners, this upcoming Monday, July 15th, the Board of Commissioners are going to have the opportunity to authorize the conceptual plan approval so that we can get to work on what that is going to start to look like. So that's a really exciting step for the project. So if you'll recall, if we go back to, I think it was our March meeting, just here, a few months ago, I put together a presentation. We talked about the project, went back and, looked at the road we've traveled there, and ultimately there was a recommendation that was made by this board to support using the grant funding that we know we got from the Delco Greenways, as well as the Park Impact Fund, should there be a need to use the Park Impact Fund in order to start the conceptual plan for Odoriceo Park. In addition, the commissioners will also see on Monday a potential authorization approval for the land boundary and survey data that we need to be able to obtain understanding of where the land boundaries really are, as well as the topographical information. So there's 2 pieces of legislation that'll be before them, and provided that those are approved, we'll get moving on starting to put that plan together, which is, again, a very exciting step. We started talking about Odoriceo in, I think, February of 2021, if memory serves me best. And we've been talking a lot about it. We've had a lot of formal meetings at the RTCA, meetings at the park. We've gathered a lot of good information. So essentially, the first conceptual plan that you will see is going to take into consideration a lot of the major themes in that feedback. So we are going to keep the woods and the development of the woods on the shelf for now. It did not seem like there's an appetite to dig into that for mountain bike trails, walking trails. So it doesn't mean that we can't have the conversation later. We certainly can. But this is more to take a solid look at the other areas. So starting to put a plan together of the comfort station that we talked about potentially being a pavilion, replacement of the playground, reconfiguration, reorganization of the lots. I know we heard a lot of feedback, and there was a lot of wants, wishes, and desires, if you will. I know, there's some people who wanted things that you probably will not see in the plan initially, but if those flush out subsequently as we start to meet further, this is to generate a starting point, essentially. So you won't see pickleball courts on the plan, but as we evolve, that becomes something that the community wants. Like another thing was the water park, having a spray ground at the park was something, you won't see that in initial plan, but you'll see a placeholder for the playground. We can get into details of what that looks like later. This is more to start etching out what those programmatic pieces and features are going to look like. We're also going to be taking a look at accessibility throughout the park. We're going to be taking a look at stabilization of the hillside. We know that the erosion down into the ball field is a significant issue, so a lot of that will be taken into consideration. So if we receive the authorization on Monday night, once the consultant starts to work through the process and we generate a draft concept plan, we'll bring that back and we'll start to look at that. In fact, at that point, I'll suggest we have another meeting at the RTCA, or here maybe initially to daylight it, then have another community meeting and start to really talk about the pieces and understand what changes thereafter are still going to be desired, because it will be a process.
Very happy to see that coming along. West Wayne Preserve.
So the West Wayne Preserve, the South Devon Flood Reduction Project, as I'm sure folks can see, has made considerable progress. And due to a lot of the rains that we had received, of course, in May, is very green. So I know that we haven't been so lucky throughout most of June, but there is a lot of watering that's happening in that park. And right now, the project on that side is essentially in punch list. So working through a few remaining pieces. Friends of Radnor Trails Park on the other side, paving started on the parking lot this week, so that's underway. And then we know there's going to be a lot of seeding going on in the area where the open area where the dog park is. So some of that is going to still be sort of quarantined to keep the dogs off, but there's essentially, once the parking lot opens and we work through the final stages and punch lists of the project, when we open back up, we'll have another area just on the other side of where you'll see the seed and the hay, where the dogs will be able to come back into the park and essentially use the area. So it's made a lot of progress, and I know our township engineer is looking forward to getting that project over the finish line.
Okay, moving right along here. The trail projects.
Do you want to go back to dogs real quick?
Who?
Dogs at the Willows.
I skipped that.
I know I don't want to talk about it either, but we have to. I'm just kidding.
That wasn't purposeful at all.
Yes. Concerns about that?
Just an update. The ordinance has been implemented. I know the feedback, continues to still be varied. I know we're doing our best with enforcement and having, officers and whatnot, staff members get out there and talk to folks. But, I understand from a lot of people who are out there on the trails that, when no one's around and no one's looking, the dogs are still off leash. So we do want to continue to encourage folks to follow the ordinance. There is signage. Some of the signage has been removed. We're working on having it replaced. We had a sign that was put up right at the entrance to the trail at the wood path that basically informed folks that they have to keep their dog on a leash until they get to the entrance. Somebody took it down within a week, so we're kind of chasing after some of that and working on some additional signage to place in and around different areas on the other side, of course, near Skunk Hollow and Sawmill as well. Some of that signage has been missing, so we're not sure what's happening there. We want to encourage folks to call 911 also, so we can generate those reports. I know we continue to get, again, a lot of emails about different issues and different situations. So calling 911 is really critical to get an officer out there so we can make a report and then we have the documentation. I'm hearing a lot about dogs not being cleaned up after, so that is a recurring issue, getting a lot of feedback there. We did have 2 dogs that entered a wedding at the mansion, and the dogs had to be quarantined. 911 unfortunately was not called, but the report was made subsequently to our department. I guess eventually the owner had caught up with the dogs, and
That was on a weekend?
I believe so, because I think the only time the weddings are happening is on a weekend. It might have been a Friday night. I can get the date.
Tammy, when you're saying you're getting feedback, is this reports like, I was on the trail on such and such date, dogs were off leash, even though it was within the timeframes that, under the ordinance? Is that what you mean by feedback?
Emails, essentially.
But it's complaints of violators?
Yes.
In terms of feedback?
Yes.
It's not like feedback like, we think this is good, we think this is bad?
No, just more so just, kind of giving us a bird's eye view of what's going on.
Have there been citation issued yet?
I have to check in with police on that. I believe there have been. I know that we had a dog-on-dog attack. That was pretty significant. We're working with a lot of the websites that are promoting Skunk Hollow, the Willows, as being an off-leash dog area to change the information that they have. So there's some things out on Nextdoor, there's Google searches, there's things like that that generate feedback about the park that advocate it and tout it as being an off-leash area. So we've been submitting requests to change that information because we know that there's just advertising that is out there. People are doing research, where can I take my dog off leash? And, it's probably something that's coming up in search engines and things like that.
Are the reports coming in from other dog owners, or are they coming in from non-dog owners? Any sense of that? Because I know one of the things when we were getting feedback on the ordinance and the proposals was, well, we self-regulate ourselves. I'm sure you don't have this offhand. I'm just kind of curious about that.
I'd have to look. I think it's kind of both.
Okay. This is an ongoing issue. It will be under the ordinance. I think we have to revisit it in another 12 months.
Hey, I
And that
agree.
was the part of the ordinance.
So, I hope things do improve so there doesn't have to be anything more drastic done. But that's discouraging.
Yeah, and I think this off-leash problem is one that's spreading. I know there was a social media report this today, I think I saw it, regarding some kind of attack at Tennell, and I know from going through Tennell, it's a dog leash-free park. It's just a free-for-all. And with the interaction of kids and all, it's a widely aged park in terms of the age of people using it. Some elderly folks get their walks around the loop, and young kids, and it can be a free-for-all.
Yeah, Tennell, oh, sorry, that's really loud. At Tennell, right, there's no dogs allowed on the actual fields at all, and that whole intersection is a field. And I've seen, people in there, way too many times with a dog loose or whatever, or just a dog. It seems somewhat odd, like the rule that we came up with was like the weekends and had a time thing. And we were trying to make it to appease people, but the Pennsylvania law is all dogs must be under control and must not be allowed to run at large. And we could easily just, and should, do that. And it seems like people are not doing that at Skunk Hollow and what happened at the Willows.
Well, I think the health department, we had, as far as I understand, their recommendation was to stick to that, and that all dogs needed to be on leash as well. So that's sort of, you had those two, I forget what the health committee, I'm blanking on the name of it, but I
Board of
remember
Health.
The Board of Health, they recommended that as well, that all dogs have to be on leash.
Yeah, even though that's like the PA law, all dogs must be under control.
Under control being the operative words.
And not to be allowed to run at large. And I've
Right.
gone to Skunk Hollow and I see tons of dogs run at large. I've seen the dogs, as soon as they get out of the car, run around all over the place in the parking lot and would get hit. It makes no sense. And I don't know if the people are from Radnor or not. They may not know the rule. T just made the rule like a year or two ago. And they said it took them 6 months to finally, for people to catch on. Ours, it seems like it's going the other way, though.
Anecdotally, I would agree with that observation, Commissioner. And I don't think it's that hard to put a dog on a leash, and I've been fortunate enough to do some traveling all over the place to some very outdoorsy areas, California, Colorado. I've been in national parks, state parks, local parks. Not sure I saw a single dog off leash in all those places I went to. And they have millions of acres of open space to let folks run wild. And other than penned-in designated dog parks, they're all on leash. It's for the good of everybody. But I guess we'll keep an eye on this issue. I know there's great resistance from a segment of the population about that, but yeah, putting on my lawyer hat, I do worry about the implications for the township in terms of exposure by not policing what is becoming more and more a known problem that the township's on notice about.
Yeah, and the stealing of the sign also, which
Yeah, I actually find that to be very problematic.
Yeah,
Because it just, it demonstrates a spirit of just completely disobeying the law.
yeah.
And I looked at these reports that you're having because we definitely gave an opportunity for a community to have access to the park off leash, but if this is an ongoing issue and these reports are consistent, we can revisit this again. I would have a change of heart in terms of allowing off leash.
Was it part of our, of the recommendation that we visited in 6 to 12 months anyway?
Yeah.
Within the end of the year.
It was, I think we recommended 2 years. The Board of Commissioners amended it and made within we have to revisit within a year.
Yes, they amended it.
So, I mean, I concur that just taking the sign down is just an absolute, middle finger to this process that we're trying to work and make everybody as equally unhappy as possible, so.
Probably the most counterproductive thing that could have been done.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed to hear about that, so.
How about now? Trail projects?
Just, so two updates there. One has to do with the trail extension. So the Board of Commissioners had authorized at the May meeting the additional design work for the culvert, as well as the continued remediation of the contaminated soils. So that's continuing to progress. Obviously, as things continue to move along, I'll keep you posted. As we discussed when I made the presentation update on all the trail projects. So that is being covered, that cost is being covered by grant money, so the design work. But there still is not there's no funding mechanism right now currently for the trail extension. So that's something that will continue to be looked at, as time goes on and we understand what exactly those costs ultimately end up being. So obviously a combination of grants, potential general obligation funding, grant funding, capital funding. It'll be subject, of course, to all of that. And as you guys know, competing with many, many other projects for anything that has to do with capital dollars, of course, or general obligation dollars. My next update was just going to be on Cornerstone. I don't know if, Andy, you wanted to take some of that. I can.
I'm happy to, if you want to sort of get
Sure.
off the hot seat.
Absolutely.
And I apologize in
Go
advance, Commissioner Riley, you're going to have to hear the brunt of this. As you all saw, I sent an email back this past spring about graffiti on the TAP Trail, which, by way of background, starts on South Bryn Mawr Avenue and sort of extends towards Haverford Township, but doesn't get there, essentially. As I mentioned, this was part of a project that was approved by the, after there's a lot of turnover since that Board of Commissioners, but it was basically approved before COVID and built, and I think ground was broken in 2021, I believe, something along those lines. Anyway, since I sent that email alerting, I live right by it, went running on it, found extensive graffiti. It's been hit by graffiti 2 other times since then. And it's getting more and more aggressive, the graffiti. Instead of just simple things painted on the ground, they're painting on the fences, and it's getting more and more sort of sending a message to, I guess, the township. Tammy has been working very hard with Public Works and the police to get it taken care of promptly, and redone, but this is going to continue if this trail continues to be a trail to nowhere, which essentially is, it goes up to the stream back there about 0.4 miles off of South Bryn Mawr Avenue and essentially stops. I believe in May, Tammy arranged a meeting with myself and individuals from Haverford Township about what can be done to extend it. Haverford has an easement along Darby Road, which is the road that would essentially, if this was extended, would into Haverford, would meet up with Darby Road to the Haverford Reserve, which is a great, if anyone who's been there, is a great collection of parks and trails. This would be an ideal extension to have, but it's completely in Haverford Township. If you go back on the trail, it's like in sort of Field of Dreams. You get to a certain point, it stops. As I've mentioned, there's been continued to be graffiti despite Tammy and Public Works' great efforts to cover it up. This will continue as long as this trail is essentially a trail to nowhere. There's no reason for people to go on it right now. It's only a third of a mile. There's no general use of it. I can tell you, I've used it once a week because I live right there, and I've seen one other person outside of someone in my family use it. I think the Board of Commissioners, I've emailed with Commissioner Mulroney and let her know each time I've come across graffiti. One time was in mid-May, and the most recent time was in mid-June. That I think the Board of Commissioners need to think about some outside-of-the-box ways to address this, sort of stopping at the township line and work with Haverford to help extend the trail into Haverford Township so it can meet up with Haverford Reserve, just so to get the traffic in there to prevent this continued vandalism. I don't see any other way to stop it outside of having a police officer sit there, which is not feasible to have, other than encouraging the use of this asset that the township put an extensive investment in through the former Board of Commissioners. So I think Commissioner Mulroney was going to sort of caucus about the idea. I don't know if that's happened or not, but I know that I got the impression she was very genuinely concerned about this continued, vandalism, 3 times the charm here. So I would just encourage the Board of Commissioners to sort of look at this, see that what can be done, just so that the investment that was made, which was several hundred thousand dollars for the whole project, not just this tap part, but the whole part, isn't a sunk cost for this like trail to nowhere. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions that from what I've seen. Or
Is the brunt of the graffiti at the entrance or
No.
deeper in?
Deeper in, so that of the 3 occasions, the first occasion there was a little bit of graffiti about 1/10 of a mile in, and then if you continue on about 0.3 miles in, there's a bridge over a stream.
I see.
They hit the guardrails with some vulgar graffiti, not just. I can't believe I'm classifying graffiti, but more vulgar graffiti. And then the second round, it was much more extensive, but I'd say more about 1/10 of a mile in from South Bryn Mawr Avenue. But then also continued back into the part of Haverford. There's some old utility apparatus that was hit on the Haverford side. I think Public Works took care of that. The third attack was about 1/10 of a mile in, and that included along the walls. There was a sign that was, I guess, aluminum sign that was crinkled up, and some challenging language. Let's just put it that way, put onto the wall. So I know the police and the Public Works are working hard on this, but this is going to continue. And I think it's an area back there, because it's isolated. It's now just a paved way to an isolated area compared to before when it was just a utility road to an isolated area. So I hope it's something that, something can be worked out. Tammy and I walked the trail, getting over the stream, which I would say is about 12 feet wide. You then get into, there is some area that is able to be walked as a trail, but some area needs to be cleared. It gets very thin along along the stream there. Then it comes out on Darby Road. By the time when we walked it back in, I want to say it was May, we had substantial rain, and to get on Darby, the Darby Road portion just had some wood laid down to try to get across, like mud piles, essentially. But I think it has lots of potential. You know, Haverford seemed interested, but, you know, they have other projects ahead of it. And also, this isn't their problem. They didn't invest hundreds of thousands of dollars on the portion that was put in, and according to them, they were caught by surprise when it went in. They did not know that it was coming in, the Radnor portion, and I think the exact language was wasn't any coordination, and it was surprised when it went in. I can tell you that I'm getting a lot of questions from individuals in my neighborhood in Cornerstone, what's going on here, because my neighborhood, the HOA provided an easement for a portion of the trail with certain understandings, and they're wondering what's going on. So that's, I don't know if anything more, Tammy, that can be had on that.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I know that the police department is working eagerly to catch the person. In fact, there's surveillance that had been obtained of it going on, which has been put out on social media. So I know the chief of police was trying to work through a process of a monetary award, to catch the people who are responsible. So that's being done. So I know some of that information has been circulated publicly to get that information out. I can have a conversation with the superintendent to see if there's some more eager methods that we can deploy. Obviously, it would involve putting someone on the trail, which I believe we also did, or we're looking to evaluate doing. So that is definitely within a possibility, because it's very unfortunate that this does continue to happen, because we're all chasing it. You know, Public Works is chasing it, trying to clean it up because it looks terrible. So it's really quite brazen of the individuals that are continuing to come back there, which appear to be the same individuals. I don't know that for a fact, but based on surveillance, that's what it's looking like. So that's one piece of it, is continuing to sort through that and try and catch the individuals. The other piece is, I know that Commissioner Mulroney is vested into this. I know she was planning to have some further discussions with Haverford Township board members to see if there's a way we could potentially share the cost of a bridge that could be installed over the creek. I do believe once we could get over that creek, everything from there is kind of all downhill, so to speak. We have some great boardwalks that go through Skunk Hollow on the trails back there. Those could easily be laid in those areas that lead up and head up to Darby Road. We did walk through it. It was muddy, it was dirty, but I think some of those boardwalks, and we kind of directed them as samples they could take a look at, as Eagle Scout projects for potential Eagle Scouts within Haverford. Even though I know there's Eagle Scouts all over that are always looking for projects, and we have a great template that our Eagle Scouts have created. So I think if we were able to, get some commitment to funding on the bridge, which, and I know in my time right now putting together the capital plan, it will be included. I will get some ideas on costs, at least order of magnitude, something with an estimate, so we can at least put that in there as a project, because that's an important project. The only other thing that I would suggest is if it does come to fruition, making this a very, popular trail, is to consider what those additional connections to some of the other neighborhoods are that aren't just Cornerstone, so more people can enjoy it, because it's really a beautiful trail back through there. And then especially once you get on into Haverford, really it's quite amazing to get up to the preserve and see some of those other areas.
Have the regional trail representatives weighed in on this? I know there's such an active community with trails. What is their input? They're usually very aggressive about getting trails. So.
Well, that was the thing when this was presented to us, and I know Bill was on the board when I was on it. This was presented to us like, this is the missing piece. This was sort of like the corner, was sort of the missing piece to connect the trails, which was some of the emphasis behind it. Now, I want to be clear, part of this project was when Ethan was the sort of making those, I don't know if you drive down there, you'll see paintings of bicycles like that. It's just sort of like, that's considered a trail. So it was including that, and it was sort of, we were presented with it, and I can't remember what a motion, if it was a motion or something, but there was Board of Commissioners present. The meeting was held upstairs here at the Township Building. It was, we want to go forward with this because it's the missing piece to connect it here. I firmly believe that if we can get the bridge across, I agree completely with Tammy, it is not going to be as wide of a trail as it currently is. It's going to be very narrow at portions, I guess, in parts, but it can be cleared and can be done at a minimal cost. It would become almost like a partial paved, partial unpaved trail. Get you onto, but if it gets you to that easement on Darby Road, which gets you then to the Haverford Reserve, that gets you connected. You know, because I think a lot of residents in the southern portion of the township, they don't get up to the, when they exercise, ride bikes, they're not getting up to the Radnor Trail, they're trying to get down to the Haverford Reserve. So it would be about a quarter of a mile once you clear the bridge, but getting that bridge, getting some kind of across that, that stream, which is about 12 feet, is sort of the linchpin to this. And I think Haverford would, you know, be open if there can be some momentum behind this to then sort of using that, because it will extend the trails in their township, which I know they've been very active on, and they have a very active trails group there, a very knowledgeable active trails group. It's just this portion of it was not really on their radar because, you know, quite frankly, they didn't know that the Radnor portion was going in. So, but anyway, if any of the board want to ever see it, just let me know. I'm happy to walk you back there at any point, so.
The Radnor Activity Center?
That project's still moving along. We're in the process of making some determinations on programmatically how we could change and reconfigure some parts of the building that aren't necessarily set up for locker rooms, but could be set up more for open space rooms and things like that. So a lot of it's predicated on discussions that are on the horizon with the school district. So at the present time, the project is kind of like at a little bit of a halt until those discussions can happen.
I'll ask that later. Radnor Township capital budget.
So there's a couple of updates there, just starting to update projects for the capital budget. There's no designation of funding or anything like that just yet. I know we talked a couple different times over the last year. You know, before this board is going to start to really weigh in on capital funding, need to understand what is going to be funded. Like what is a dollar amount? Is there a dollar amount? Is there potential for general obligation, you know, bond in the future? I don't know the answers to those questions. Those will all be unfolding, obviously, over the next 6 months or so. But as you know, we start to dig into that, I'll continue to keep you updated. I know just like the TAP trail and the development of a bridge across the stream would become a new project within that as a submission, which will be yet another project vying, of course, for funding, and then potentially opportunistic for grants and, you know, supplemental funding and things like that to get those projects done. So we're going to continue to look creatively at how things like that can be done, not just, you know, with, you know, trail projects, but everything across the board, playground replacements, you know, different parking area projects, walking path renovations, things like that. So that's just underway. As far as the Park Impact Fund, as we talked, if there are subsequent fees for Odoricio that go above and beyond the grant that has been received, those would, of course, be recommended to the commissioners to be utilized from that fund. So a lot of the legislation that they're going to see on Monday night is going to indicate that.
The
So the-
Radnor Township Comprehensive Plan?
There was a big meeting that was held in May at the library. It was very heavily attended. I want to say we had close to 100 people who attended the meeting. We had a workshop session, broke down into a lot of different groups, and a lot of feedback was gathered through Studio, which is the consultant that's working on the comp plan project. So that information is being internalized and will be generated in a report in more details. So the project is evolving. As more public opportunities become available, I will certainly keep the Parks Board updated, as well as any reports that are generated as a result of a lot of the community survey and feedback that continues.
Thank you. And Parks and Rec Board member Park Steward program. Anybody have anything to report on their parks? Nothing? Nothing?
Not for mine. Things look good from the parks I've seen.
Okay. Public participation? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I have a comment. The Ithan Creek one there, Cornerstone, that path, the 12-foot bridge that's needed, and I just looked up some, and I went there to check it out. I forget when, but a few months ago or whatever. And we don't need much, and it connects us to a lot. So it would be a good thing to do, and it's not going to be that much money compared to what we're getting out of it. So it would be nice to push that forward somehow.
You know, I mean, I agree, and I think just the recent vandalism is just an unfortunate effect of its lack of use.
Yeah,
I mean-
I put cameras on everything.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, that's,
Oh, there are cameras.
yeah, but the thing, I mean, it's a reflection of its lack of use, which I think
Yeah.
is the bigger issue.
Right.
These guys eventually, the guys who are doing the graffiti will get caught, I'm confident of. But it doesn't stop the next person unless we get some more value for the residents of, making that more than just a
Yeah.
paved area to nowhere.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Nothing else? Is that all?
See you in September.
See you in September. Okay. Is this adjournment?
Moved.
Move. It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good summer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.